I had already forwarded the email. I had already spoken to the lawyer. I want to be clear about that because when I tell you what happened at my sister-in-law's birthday dinner, the one my husband planned, the one he turned into something else entirely, I don't want you to think I was caught off guard. I wasn't. Not by the end. But let me start where it actually started, which was a Tuesday in March, standing in our kitchen in Oakville, reading a text message that wasn't meant for me. Theodore had left his phone on the counter. He did that sometimes, just set it face up beside the coffee maker when he went to shower. I wasn't snooping. I want to say that plainly. I was pouring myself a second cup and his screen lit up, and I looked down and I read it before I even understood what I was reading. Tonight was everything. Don't overthink it. You know what you want. The contact name said Lynette. Work. I set my coffee cup down. I picked up my phone. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, sat on the edge of the tub and read that text message 6 more times. You know what nobody tells you about the moment you find out? It's quiet. That's the part that surprised me. I always imagined it would feel like something breaking. A crash. But it didn't. It felt like the whole room had gone very still, and I was sitting in the middle of it, completely clear-headed, thinking, okay, what do I do with this? Theodore and I had been married for 11 years. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming in Hamilton when I was 28. He was charming in that easy, unhurried way that some men have, the kind of charm that doesn't announce itself, just settles in around you before you realize it's there. He worked in commercial real estate development. I was finishing my 2nd year teaching at an elementary school in Burlington. We were different people in a lot of ways, but I think that's what I liked about it. He moved fast. I measured twice. He talked to rooms full of people easily. I was better one-on-one. He said I grounded him. I believed that for a long time. We bought our house in Oakville 4 years into the marriage. A brick semi-detached with a decent backyard and good schools nearby because we were planning for things then. Planning for a family, for a future, for all of it. That planning slowed down over time, and then it quietly stopped, and I noticed that, but I didn't say enough about it. That part is on me. What I didn't know, what I had no idea about, was the other thing that had been quietly happening on Theodore's side. After I found the text, I didn't confront him. I've thought about that choice a lot since then, and I want to explain it because some people hear that, and they think it means I was afraid, or that I was hoping I was wrong. Neither of those things was true. I didn't confront him because I had been married to this man for 11 years, and I knew exactly how that conversation would go. He would explain it away. He would find the angle where it didn't mean what it looked like. He was very good at that. He built a career on it. So instead of saying anything, I went to work that day. I taught my class. I supervised recess. I drove home, made dinner, ate across the table from him while he talked about a project in Mississauga, and I smiled and nodded in the right places. And that night, after he fell asleep, I went to the office. We had a shared home office on the 2nd floor, my desk on one side, his on the other. His filing cabinet was the older one by the window. I had never had a reason to go through it before. I wasn't that kind of person, and he wasn't the kind of person I thought I needed to go through things for. So I had never looked. I looked now. Most of it was what you'd expect. Property files, some older tax records, receipts for things I didn't recognize. I opened the bottom drawer, and near the back, behind a folder of home insurance documents, I found something that stopped me completely. It was a set of incorporation papers. A numbered company, UNID 4793 Ontario Inc., operating as Caldwell Advisory Group, registered in Theodore's name. Not our name, not our joint name. His. I photographed every page. Then I found the property schedule attached to the back. 3 condominiums. One in Etobicoke, one in North York, one in a new build in Waterloo that I had never once heard him mention. all held under the numbered company, all acquired within the last 4 years. I sat on the floor of that office for a long time. I thought about the conversation we'd had 18 months ago, when I suggested we look at a rental property as an investment. He had said we didn't have the liquidity right now. He had said the market was too uncertain. He had said maybe in a few years, Colette. He had said my name in that patient way he had, and I had nodded, and that had been the end of it. I went back to the filing cabinet. I found bank statements for an account I had never known existed. I found a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, taken out against our Oakville house, our house, the one we bought together, the one I was on the mortgage for. He had borrowed against our home to fund properties I didn't know existed. I sat there until almost 2 a.m. Then I went back to bed, lay beside my husband, and stared at the ceiling until it got light outside. The next morning, I called a family lawyer, a woman named Irene, who came recommended by a colleague of mine who had been through her own difficult separation a few years before. I told Irene I needed an appointment as soon as possible. She had a cancellation that Friday. I did not tell Theodore I was going. The Friday appointment changed my understanding of everything. Irene explained to me that in Ontario, net family property is divided on separation. But hidden assets complicate the picture significantly, especially when debt has been secured against marital property without the other spouse's informed consent. She told me what I needed to gather. She told me what steps I needed to take, and in what order, and how to do it without tipping my hand too early. I am a person who follows instructions carefully. It's part of what makes me a decent teacher. You give me a clear set of steps. I will do them in order thoroughly without cutting corners. I spent the next 6 weeks doing exactly what Irene told me to do. I requested documentation through my lawyer. I got an independent property appraisal done on our home. I contacted the financial institutions whose names I'd found on the statements. I spoke with a forensic accountant, a quiet, efficient man named Douglas, who helped me trace the money that had moved through the numbered company over the past 4 years. Douglas found 2 more accounts. He found transfers that had been structured to look like business expenses. He found a pattern. Theodore, meanwhile, was planning a dinner party. His sister Annette was turning 45 in May. She lived in Burlington, and Theodore had offered to organize the celebration dinner at a restaurant downtown. Somewhere nice, somewhere the whole family could gather. His parents were coming up from St. Catharines, cousins from Brampton, a handful of Annette's closest friends. I had helped him with the guest list. I had confirmed my own presence. I assumed it would be what it was presented as, a birthday dinner for his sister. I should have read the invitation more carefully. The week before the dinner, I got a call from Annette. She sounded strange, quiet in a way she usually wasn't. Annette and I had always had a decent relationship, not close exactly, but warm. She asked me if I was doing okay. I said yes. Why do you ask? She paused for a moment and then said, I just want you to know I didn't know it was going to be like this. I asked her what she meant. She said she had to go, and she hung up. I called Irene that evening. I told her what Annette had said. Irene told me to make sure I had everything in order before I walked into that dinner. She told me to bring nothing with me on paper. Everything was already filed, already documented, already held somewhere safe. She told me to go, and to be calm, and to let it happen. Whatever he's planned, she said, he doesn't know what you know. You have the advantage. Don't give it up. I wore a green dress to the dinner. I had bought it the previous spring and barely worn it. I put on the earrings Theodore had given me on our 8th anniversary. I did my hair. I looked in the mirror for a long moment before I left the house. I thought, whatever is coming, you are ready. The restaurant was a nice one. Exposed brick, warm lighting, the kind of place where the menu is printed on thick cardstock, and the waitstaff remember what you ordered last time. Theodore was already there when I arrived. He was standing near the entrance talking to his cousin Freddie, and when he saw me come through the door, his expression did something I couldn't quite read. Not guilt. Something closer to relief. That should have told me something. The first hour was almost normal. Wine was poured. Bread came out. Annette's friends laughed at the right moments, and Theodore's father made the toast he always made, the one about family being the most important investment. I sat beside Theodore. I ate my appetizer. I smiled when people looked at me. I noticed that Annette was not looking at me. Partway through the main course, Theodore stood up. He tapped his glass. The table went quiet. He said he wanted to say something before dessert. He said that family was the most important thing in the world to him. He said that honesty was a value he had always tried to live by. He said that sometimes people grew in different directions, and the most loving thing you could do was to acknowledge that clearly, openly, with the people who mattered most. I understood then what was happening. He was doing it here, in front of his parents, in front of his sister's friends, in front of Freddie and Freddie's wife and the cousin whose name I always forgot. He was announcing our separation. He looked at me when he said it. He said my name, Colette, in that patient way, and he said that we had been growing apart for some time, and that he was grateful for everything we had shared, and that he hoped we could move forward with grace and mutual respect. He said mutual respect. He was smiling. Not a big smile, a small, practiced one. His mother started crying softly. His father looked down at his plate. Annette had her eyes fixed on the candle in the center of the table. I sat there and let him finish. Then I picked up my wine glass, and I took a slow sip, and I set it down. The table was very quiet. Theodore had the look of a man who had expected me to cry, or to get up and leave, or to say something that he could gently talk over, that he could manage. He had planned for those things. You could see it in the way he was holding himself, ready to step in, ready to moderate, ready to be the calm one in whatever scene I created. I didn't create a scene. I said, "Thank you, Theodore. I think it's good to be honest." He blinked. I reached into my bag and I took out my phone. I said, "While we're being honest, there are some things I think the people who matter most to you should probably know, since you've chosen to make this a family conversation." His smile went still. I said, "About 4 years ago, Theodore incorporated a numbered company, 1847932, Ontario. He used it to purchase 3 investment properties, one in Etobicoke, one in North York, one in Waterloo. None of these were disclosed to me as his spouse. The funding for these purchases included money drawn from a home equity line of credit secured against the home we own jointly. I was not informed of this borrowing. I did not consent to it." His father looked up. I kept my voice even. I had practiced this, not the words exactly. Irene had advised me not to script it too precisely. But the tone, the pace, the thing I wanted to convey, which was that I was not angry, I was not unraveling, I was simply telling the truth. I said, "My lawyer has documented all of this. The transfers, the accounts, the property holdings. A forensic accounting report has already been completed and filed. The properties will form part of the equalization calculation in our separation. The HELOC balance will be addressed as part of that process as well." I paused. I said, "I also want to say, and I mean this sincerely, that I hope we can move forward with grace and mutual respect." I used his exact words. Theodore sat down. I don't think he meant to. I don't think it was a decision. He just sat down, like something had gone out of him. Freddie's wife excused herself from the table. Annette finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet. She gave me the smallest nod I have ever seen. Theodore's father said very quietly, "Theodore, what is she talking about?" Theodore said, "It's complicated, Dad," his father said. "It doesn't sound complicated." The dinner ended not long after that. There was no dessert. People found their coats. Theodore's mother hugged me on the way out, which surprised me. A long, tight hug, the kind that doesn't have words attached to it. She didn't say anything. She just held on for a moment and then let go. Theodore and I drove home separately. He had taken his own car. I drove back through Burlington on the QEW, windows down a little, the May air still cool. I put on the radio. There was a program on CBC. Someone talking about migratory birds in the Great Lakes region, something I would normally find interesting. I listened to about 3 minutes of it. Then I turned it off and drove the rest of the way in quiet. I'm not going to tell you I felt triumphant. That's the thing about those moments, the ones you prepare for. They don't feel like you imagined them. In my head, I had imagined something cleaner, something that wrapped up. What I actually felt, driving home that night, was tired. Just deeply, honestly tired. But underneath the tired, there was something else, something solid. Theodore sent me a text around midnight. It said, "I didn't know you knew." I read it. I set my phone face down on the nightstand. Because here is what I had understood, sitting on the floor of that home office in March, surrounded by documents I wasn't supposed to find. Theodore had made a calculation. He had decided, somewhere along the way, that I wasn't paying close enough attention, that I was busy with my students and my routines and my ordinary, unglamorous life, and that I would not notice the things he was quietly building somewhere else. He thought that the woman who measured twice before she cut was the same woman who would miss what was right in front of her. He thought the quiet in me was the same as being asleep. The separation took 8 months to finalize. It was not easy, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. There were days when Irene had to talk me through things I didn't want to think about, and days when I sat in my car, in the school parking lot, for 10 minutes after my shift, just breathing, before I felt ready to drive. My mother came to stay with me for 2 weeks in the summer. She flew in from Fredericton, slept in the guest room, made soup, asked no questions I didn't want to answer. My closest friend Tamsin came over on a Friday night in September with a bottle of wine and said absolutely nothing useful and exactly the right things. What I will tell you is this: the equalization process in Ontario is thorough. It accounts for everything. Property acquired during the marriage, debts incurred, assets held, all of it goes into the calculation. The 3 properties Theodore had held under the numbered company were included. The HELOC balance was accounted for. Douglas's forensic report meant that very little could be minimized or explained away. I am not in the house in Oakville anymore. I have a 2-bedroom apartment now, in a building near the lakeshore in Burlington. It has good light in the mornings. There's a path nearby where I run 3 times a week. I adopted a cat in November, Orange Tabby, deeply unimpressed by me, named Ernest. I still teach. The same school, the same grade. I have 23 kids in my class this year, and 2 of them are going to keep me awake at night, thinking about them for years after they've moved on, which is exactly how it always goes. I'm not going to tell you I saw all of this coming from the beginning, because I didn't. I trusted someone I had chosen to trust, and he made choices that I didn't know about, and for a while I lived inside a version of my life that wasn't fully real. That part wasn't something I did wrong. People who love other people take them at their word. That's not naivety, that's faith, and faith is not the mistake. The mistake would have been staying asleep. I want to talk for a moment about what Annette said to me a few weeks after the dinner. She called me on a Sunday. She said that Theodore had told her a few months before the dinner that the marriage was over, that I had checked out, that he was moving on, and he wanted the family to understand why. She'd said she had believed him, mostly, because she didn't have any reason not to. She said she was sorry. I told her she didn't have to apologize for trusting her brother. She said, "I should have called you sooner." I almost did a dozen times. I said, You called me once. It was enough. It's a strange thing to be known accurately by someone who was, technically, on the other side. But Annette understood something about what had happened that I think even I was still working out at the time. This wasn't a story about a marriage falling apart. Those happen. People fall out of love. They drift. They want different things. None of that is a crime, and none of it requires a lawyer. This was a story about someone deciding that I didn't count, that my name on a mortgage didn't count, that 11 years of a shared life didn't entitle me to know what was being done with the equity in our home, that I was the kind of woman who could be managed, presented with a version of events, and would simply accept it. I think about the woman I had to become in those 6 weeks, methodical, strategic, quiet in a different way than I had been quiet before, more deliberate. I am, by nature, a person who wants to believe the best of the people around me, and that instinct didn't go away. It just learned to share space with something else, a kind of clear-eyed attention that I carry with me now. Ernest the cat is asleep on my feet while I'm writing this. Outside, there's a light snow. Early for October in Burlington, but not unheard of. The lake through the window is flat and gray and completely itself. I let the quiet settle around me, and I think about how different this kind of quiet is, how it has a different quality to it, how it belongs to me.